I think it's very important to have strong foundations in terms of how you do things, like a policies and procedures in terms of how your office manages its projects, and not just on the architectural side of things, but just in an operational sense, how you run your company. You have to be able to clearly define what it is that you do in order to delegate that sort of high-level accountability.
Business of Architecture, episode 173. Hello, I'm Enoch Sears, and this is the podcast for architects, where you'll discover tips, strategies, and secrets for running a profitable and impactful architecture practice. I'd like to invite you to discover how to double your architecture firm income and create your dream practice of freedom and impact by downloading my free 4-part architecture firm profit map. As a podcast listener, you can get instant access by going to freearchitectgift.com. Today we talk with Eric Baer. Eric is a principal at AB Design Studio based out of Santa Barbara, California, and he is the Director of Studio Operations. Today you'll pick up more important business lessons like how to delegate effectively and how to get past the 2-person office hump if you want to scale your architecture firm. Now, let's get down to business. Eric, welcome to Business of Architecture.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Eric, tell our listeners about your background and how you came to start working for AB Design Studio.
Yeah, I'll give you kind of the long version because it's an interesting story. I grew up in Defiance, Missouri, which is a small country town of about 500 people outside the St. Louis area. Went to college at Kansas State University, got my master's of architecture there, and ended up taking a job in LA. I worked for Marmol Radziner, which is a pretty high profile, mostly residential architecture firm in LA. So I worked there for about a year. I graduated in 2008. It was right before the recession hit. So I had a job, moved to LA, recession hit. And so I got laid off with about the other 75% of the company February of 2009. And then ended up moving back to Wisconsin. So another kind of side story, long story, but I'll say it short. I moved back with a friend of mine who I graduated with from Kansas State to northern Wisconsin, deep up in the North Woods, and we started our own sort of partnership up there. We had applied to every firm that we would want to work for in the country, and there was just no jobs then. So we joined forces up in the North Woods of Wisconsin for about 6 months. While we continued to look for employment elsewhere, we kept ourselves busy, did a few design build projects, and kind of created our own presence as an entity up there. Then
tell me about those design build projects. That sounds interesting. Tell me about that foray into Wisconsin.
Yeah, it may not be as interesting as it sounds. We did a few. So I think our first project was actually a mailbox, which is about the coolest mailbox you've probably ever seen. But we designed and built a mailbox. Then we designed.
But what was so cool about it? Tell me about. I got to know now about the mailbox. I have to know.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Up there, the snow gets so deep in the winter, so you have all these mailboxes with these like 6-foot orange rods sticking up the back end of them, so that when the trucks plow the road, the snow piles cover up the mailboxes. You can still find them and kind of dig them out. So we built ours out of wood, and had this. We sort of took a very orthogonal rectangular mailbox, tilted it at about a 30-degree angle so that the top wouldn't be flat where water wouldn't pool. We had the wood post that it was supported on kind of shaved down and raised like 6 feet up back behind the mailbox to this kind of narrowing point rather than the orange rod that all the other ones had, so that you'd find it in the snow. And then the rectangle of the mailbox itself had an inner rectangle that was actually where the mail went. So it kind of had an inner chamber, and we designed it to where when we had mail that we put in the mailbox, we would slide out the inner chamber rather than raise a little flag to let the mail lady know that we had put some mail in there. And then when she accepted it, she would push it back in. She didn't like that very much. We had to meet her out there and explain to her how it worked, of course. And, so she didn't like that very much. So we ended up having to kind of put one of those little flags on there and simplify it a bit. But that was our first project, and we put it up on the website, and we were pretty proud of it at the moment.
All right, great. Can you send me a picture of that? Because I know some of our listeners are just dying to actually see it.
Sure, yeah. I'll send you a picture of the mailbox. And then we got we each got kind of side jobs working in some bars and restaurants in the area. And one of our next projects was with one of the restaurant owners. He had this storage shed, and it had a lean-to in the back that was all run down and deteriorated. So we decided to help him design and build a new addition to that, basically tear down the old one and do a new one. And we did kind of a neat modern addition that had some slotted wood and some lighting that would let it glow at night. He got pretty excited about it, and we ended up not building it. He brought another contractor on board that was a friend of his that ended up building something slightly different. But we got to work with him and throughout the design process, and we got it all kind of costed out and bid, and we're ready to build it before it kind of changed gears. But we did some other work with one of the other bars in town. They wanted us to do a deck kind of along this lake that we were dabbling in some design work with, and as well as some camp cottages for a camp that was in the area that we did some design work with. So we were doing that was keeping us pretty busy. I think about the time December hit, we realized how cold it gets in northern Wisconsin, and so Anthony, my business partner up there, took a job with AB Design Studio in Santa Barbara, and I ended up taking a job in New York City. So we went from sharing, a lake cottage together to moving to opposite ends of the country. And I landed in Manhattan working for a one-man shop. His name was Brooks Atwood, and it was Pod Media and Design. And so he was a very, very creative person. He was also a professor at New Jersey Institute of Technology. So I worked with him for about a year. I helped him as an assistant professor occasionally at the university with his studio class. And then I helped him on his actual architectural projects. And I say creative, that word does not do this man justice. He was just extremely unique and creative and fun, and he brought that to everything that he designed. So it was a pretty interesting experience for me to work with him. It kind of culminated in us getting a project that they do every year with the Showtime Network in New York City, and it's called the Showtime House. And Showtime sponsors this. It's sort of an exhibition where they select a group of designers mostly from the New York area to design spaces in a new building in New York City that are based on one of the Showtime shows, such as Homeland or Dexter, or we got the show United States of Terra. And so and getting selected was an interesting process. We basically had to present ourselves in front of the Showtime executives. And so we showed up with a presentation that was kind of themed off of a Bob Dylan song, where he's got the posters, poster board cards with blowing in the wind kind of written on them. So we themed our presentation off of that. And we had all these crazy poster cards, and we went up there, and I don't think we even said a word. We just flipped these cards one by one in front of the board while we played that Bob Dylan song, and they loved it. And so they selected Brooks and myself to design and fabricate an exhibit for the show United States of Terra. And we ended up getting the penthouse suite of this new high-rise residential building in Midtown. And we designed this crazy experience that was supposed to be like you were inside the brain of a person with split personality, basically. And so we ended up getting about $10,000 worth of plywood, and we designed it into these ribs that created this very uncomfortable experience. These fins that kind of went up the wall and spanned the ceiling and kind of came down and touched the ground. And as you came into the space, you put on headphones. And as you walked around the space, we worked with this audio designer who created this audio experience where the sound would change as you kind of walked around the space in very odd ways, and kind of increased the level of discomfort. But it was neat. And so then we designed that, presented the design back to the executives, got their approval, and then it took about 2 to 3 weeks every day to fabricate it, install it, and get it all ready to go. And then it was up for about a month. We had a big red carpet event where a lot of the actors from the shows came, and celebrities, and then we opened it up to the public, and we had maybe 2 or 3 other kind of red carpet type events, along with all the other designers that designed spaces for the other shows. So that was a really great experience. But with my friend Anthony working in California, in Santa Barbara, working at AB Design Studio, I was hearing really great things about the company, and I was seeing a lot of great work that he was doing. And I think having left LA sort of not on my own agenda after I moved out there after college, I'd been wanting to get back ever since, I think. And so with Anthony out at AB Design Studio, he kept pushing for me to give Josh and Clay, the owners of the firm, a call and just talk about the opportunities that may be there for me to join the team. And I finally took him up on it, and I called Josh and had a great discussion. And I think it was early December of 2010. And Josh said, look, Anthony showed us your work. We really are excited about what we see with your skills, and we love Anthony. So, you come with a high recommendation from him. We think you'd be a great member of the team. How soon could you get out here? And so I tried to negotiate coming out after the Christmas and New Year's holidays. And Josh said, can you start on Monday? I think this was like a Thursday. And so they got me on a plane. They flew me out to Santa Barbara, and I started work the next day. And it was clear that the recession was easing up because they were very busy and they had a lot of big deadlines there at the end of the year. So they got me in there, and Anthony and I buckled down and spent the rest of December really working hard. And that was kind of the beginning of my time at AB Design Studio. There was only 5 of us at the time, counting both Josh and Clay. So there was Anthony, myself, and another member of the company who's still working with us, Aramis. So it was the 5 of us, along with both Josh and Clay's wives. We're doing some part-time work with the company as well. So that was the start of something that's grown into something pretty special.
Is Anthony still with you guys?
Anthony's still with us. So Anthony actually, we worked together at AB Design Studio for about 3 years, and then he met a girl and moved to LA. And so he left AB and actually started working at Marmol Radziner, which was the firm that I worked for when I graduated from Kansas State. So our fates seemed to be strangely intertwined. And then he came back. We opened up a Los Angeles Adelaide office, and went down and had a talk with him and convinced him to come back and join the team now that we had an LA office, so he could kind of have both of his worlds with his girl and his company. So he's back.
So your title is Director of Operations. Tell me what goes into that role for you. What are you doing on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I think on a day-to-day basis, we've refined my title to be more studio director, and I think that explains more what my role is. So I'm a principal of the company. I'm also the studio director of our Santa Barbara office, which at its simplest description is really just managing the studio, which by studio I mean the architectural staff that we have in the company, namely in the Santa Barbara office. And so on a day-to-day basis, I'm sort of the bridger of the gap between the firm owners and the rest of the architectural staff. And so I do a bit of managing my own projects as an architect, but I'm more so a resource to help all of our other staff manage all of our active projects. So I'm meeting with all of our project managers on a regular basis to review their projects and where they're at and how things are going, see if they need anything that I could either help with or help connect them with Josh and Clay to resolve or address. I'm also working with the remainder of our staff, which is mostly production staff, in terms of making sure they have plenty of work to do and that they've got a full plate, or to make sure they don't have too full a plate. So I'm working with everybody to make sure we've got an even workload. I'm analyzing the projects we have and the projects that are coming in to make sure we're sufficiently staffed. If we're not, I'm in charge of recruiting and hiring. So I'm keeping a constant sort of pocket full of potential candidates that could step in if we need a new project manager or we need another production staff member. And so I lead sort of the recruiting and hiring process, as well as onboarding new staff and training staff to learn how to do things the AB Design Studio way. I'm largely involved with getting projects started. So I assist with proposals and contracts and agreements, and then really bringing in projects once we have assigned agreements and making sure that they get a project team assigned to them and that they get up and running smoothly. I'm also largely involved in the design of projects AB Design Studio, I think one of the reasons we're as successful as we are is we really prioritize design in everything we do, no matter what the opportunity. Some projects, may be small, some may be large, but there's always that opportunity to bring the best design we can bring to that project. And so I'm involved with the firm owners in generating that initial concept for the project and getting that created and getting the clients enrolled and excited, and then seeing, making sure the project managers are executing that design as it moves forward.
How much of your time would you say is spent on project management, facilitating, meeting, coordinating with other people versus actually designing?
I would say the majority of my time is in the first category. So I would say, as a clean number, probably an 80-20 split. I think the majority of my job is managing, making sure we got the right people in the right seats, doing the right things, and that things are on track, and then getting the right people around the table when things may be needing a little tune-up or a focused discussion to make sure that they're staying on track. So, most of the time spent designing is in a collaborative group environment where we'll pin up the project on the wall, and we'll gather around it. We'll have an hour or two discussion and with trace paper and pens, and it's fast and furious and exciting. And so that's probably a more minor part of my day-to-day.
I know something that a lot of us architects struggle with is we go to school because we love the design, and yet when we get out and start growing in our careers, we take different paths. So the question I have for you is, Eric, just regarding the majority of your time right now being spent in project management, how does that feel for you? How did that process happen? Are you comfortable with that? How does that reflect kind of your view of architecture in school? Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, good questions. I think you hit it right on the head. When you first come out of college, the majority of the work we do in college is design related. That's the game, right? So you come out of school fired up, ready to take on the world and design everything, and then you start getting into the actual profession. The opportunity for that is lesser than you would expect. And so, but it's funny, as my career has begun, you start to also realize that in order to keep a lot of projects moving forward, you just don't have a lot of time to design. And so you start to realize, that there's a balance. And so I'm pretty pleased right now with the balance I do have. I think AB Design Studio, one of the things we pride ourselves on and what we focus on is seeing what skill set each of our staff members is best at, and then making sure that that's what we're getting out of them on a day-to-day basis. And I think with me, our firm owners really saw that I have a strong skill set in managing. I have a strong skill set in communication, especially with our clients, and hearing their concerns and making sure that we're addressing what it is that's important to them. And so I think that was a natural fit for me to start to take on more of a managerial type role. I keep a pretty level head, and I think that helps in terms of the roller coaster of emotions that can be an architectural office. And so so it's been a natural fit for me to sort of, like I said earlier, bridge the gap between both Josh and Clay and the rest of our staff, and be in sort of an overseeing managerial type position. So not a lot of frustration on my end. I think I'm given the creative outlet that I need to sort of express that designer in me on a regular basis, and that keeps me plenty happy.
Well, one thing that's common with architecture firms is it does take quite a while for, you don't see a whole lot of people progressing up to the principal level fairly quickly. A lot of times in architecture firms, you'll see people working at the lower levels, and it's kind of difficult. Some people feel to, kind of reach that level. So, you've done it fairly quickly, and, question for you is, what was that process like for you? What suggestions do you have for other people? How did that work for you there at AB Design Studio in terms of being promoted to level of principal? And I'll follow up after you answer that question.
So for me, just to start by explaining sort of what the process was like for me. I mentioned earlier, when I began, there was a small company. There was about 5 of us as full-time, counting the 2 firm owners. And I think a situation like that lends itself to a more rapid sort of climb of the ladder, if you will. I know when I began there, speaking with a lot of my other friends from architecture school that found themselves in more of a corporate setting in larger offices, that was a lot of their words of wisdom, was that there'd be some opportunity there for me in this small company to really kind of stake some ground. And I'm working with the owners themselves heavily on a day-to-day basis on everything I'm doing when I first began. And so the opportunity was there for me to develop that relationship with the owners of the company, to develop that level of trust, to really learn quickly everything that they have to offer in terms of mentorship. And so it was kind of like a boot camp. I was given the experience that somebody might take 10 or 15 years to be allowed the opportunity to participate in within a very short period of time. For me, it was more of a 3 or 4 year, like I said, boot camp almost. And it was tough. It was hard work. It was long hours. It was a lot of responsibility and a lot of, found myself in a lot of situations where I was pretty anxious and uncomfortable. I was given more accountabilities and responsibilities than I felt I was ready to handle, and in sort of a sink or swim mentality. And so, I certainly fell down plenty of times along the way, but was able to, grow quickly and learn quickly and be exposed to a lot of different situations quickly. And I think I was rewarded with how I responded to those situations and how I stepped up to those situations. And then the company all of a sudden just started to grow very, very rapidly. I think there was the first two years or so that I was there, it was Anthony and Aramis and I really rolling up our sleeves and getting the work done, and Josh and Clay really bringing the high-level thinking and the creative side of things and the design. And we were cranking out some pretty amazing work on a very fast basis. And we started to see that people were recognizing that. And so as the firm grew, we had to hire and hire and hire, and it got to the point where we were growing so rapidly that I think it became a challenge for the company to run in a way that it was accustomed to running as a small office, where Josh and Clay were at the top calling all the shots. And it became real clear real quickly that they needed some support in sort of that executive level to be doing the things that I'm doing now, training staff, making sure things are getting done the way that our company likes to do them, and bridging the gap between themselves and all these new staff members. And so,
Eric, that's a crucial jump in an architecture firm's journey, going from directly an owner-led organization where the owners have direct access and are kind of managing things themselves, to adding another layer of management where suddenly they step away from that. They can bring someone in like a studio manager to do that. Having gone through that process, what suggestions would you have for other people who may be listening to help facilitate that process? What's important to be able to make that happen and allow that growth to occur?
Yeah, great question. And like you said, it's a critical juncture and it's a very challenging one. I think it's something that we have experienced. It's not a fast process. It's something that we're pacing ourselves at and taking some time. I think the quick answer to your question would be, I think it's very important to have strong foundations in terms of how you do things, like a policies and procedures in terms of how your office manages its projects, and not just on the architectural side of things, but just in an operational sense, how you run your company. You have to be able to clearly define what it is that you do in order to delegate that sort of high-level accountability. And so what we've really focused on the last couple of years is generating sort of what we call the AB handbook in terms of describing how we do what we do. And then that really gives a strong tool for someone like me to step up and start to help manage that conversation. So, it was a mixture of just being around and having developed a relationship with Josh and Clay. We start to develop a shorthand. We trust each other, and there's, I'm able to sort of carry out their business in a way that they trust that I know what I'm doing, but then to have the support of a strong sort of foundation of all the technical side of things. And like I said, policies and procedures allows me to manage a large group of people in a consistent manner. And so that would be my advice to a small company that's looking to grow, is be documenting how you do what you do, and making sure, down to the level of even how you name your files and save them onto your server, all the way up to how you how you, what style of 3D renderings you do and what are your settings for that to, of course, your drawing standards and things of that nature, but making sure all those pieces are very clearly in place so that you're not having to explain it to everybody every time you hire somebody new. You have to define your way of running your company and make sure that the people you're bringing on board are clear on what that is and that they're up for playing the game that way. And I think that kind of segues into my other advice is really starting to identify your company culture, and so that you're confident as you bring in new members of the team that they're going to be a good fit. I think we've that's been another challenge the last few years, is just figuring that out kind of the hard way. We've brought in a lot of people based on skills and experience, and then realized that it's just we do things a certain way, and we have a company that has a certain culture, and despite very qualified candidates that maybe don't match that culture, it's not going to work. So identifying that as well will save you a lot of time and heartache, so that you're hiring the right people.
And that is a wrap. Thank you for listening today. If you're looking for more time, freedom, impact, and income as an architect, get instant access to my free 4-part architect profit map by visiting freearchitectgift.com. The sponsor for today's show is ArchReach, the client relationship management tool built specifically for architects. If you want to systematize your marketing and business development, ArchReach will help you do it. Visit archreach.com to learn more. The views expressed on this show by my guests do not represent those of the host, and I make no representation, promise, guarantee, pledge, warranty, contract, bond, or commitment except to help you conquer the world.